Hello.
Hello.
Can
Our,
you hear
our
me?
mu- our music is on holiday. Welcome
Yeah.
everybody.
No
Hope you
music
enjoyed.
today. Sorry, guys. It's like
Hope you
we,
enjoyed
we
the
hope you
intro.
we hope you stay still. It would be fine to stay with us, even though we haven't had AI generated music in the intro.
Oh man, I miss it. Anyway, burnt out and caged. As old Roman emperor once said, you can still be caged as long as the Wi-Fi is working, or something like that. I forget.
Close,
All these.
very close.
So we're primarily talking about change management and culture management today. About how most, at least in my experience, engineering leads and founders, CTOs, engineering managers, they there's a high correlation between existential dread and wanting to quit their job and their culture, or at least their team environment, needing some kind of change. So usually we put these two together. People complain about burnout whenever there's like time to, like, when there's a change needed in the organization, and it feels like an uphill battle because you need change, but also you feel burnt out, you feel caged, and then it makes it harder that the option to just leave the company and, take your chances somewhere else is on the table. It makes it harder for everybody to actually introduce the change, or to just ignore the whole situation after you're gone. What do you think, Adrian?
I think that is one of the most common things I see out there. Probably because those are the root causes for most mentorings when people actually look for help. So when
Yeah.
it's too late. And that's probably why I see that so often. But I think it is actually very often the case. And it's very often the case when you are actually not, like, say, let's say the the owner of the company, but some middle
Hmm.
management. Middle management is very like in between. Um, you are often a victim to a missing culture or a lack of sense of culture building at the top. We discussed it
Hmm.
nearly in every stream, I think, but that is now one of the reasons. And then you actually sit in between, and you feel in this cage, locked, like you are supposed to take ownership and change things, yet you have the feeling you actually need to change everything around you first in order to actually
Hmm.
make a move. And that is the metaphor for the cage. So there are bars everywhere and no one lets you out, and
Right.
you are supposed to do everything inside there. So you can find ways to cope with it. That is probably what you were funnily referring to, what actually Marcus Aurelius saying, that you can even live well in the palace. And so the idea was he is caged in the palace, and he managed, because of his stoic mind, his philosophy, to manage there to live well, even though that was another time and another reason. So as a tech person, it's not like that society there forces you to be there in this situation, in this cage. You can change something about that. You have that in your influence zone, and you should, because if you can't do it for yourself, you cannot
Hmm.
really be there for others. That was the big difference to Marcus Aurelius, who was in fact emperor of the known world. So he basically owned the world. He could do whatever he wanted. You, as a tech lead, cannot do this. So you are powerless and cage at the same time. So you can't be both at the same time. You need to do something about it.
First things first, Adrian, do you need to leave sooner today?
Yes. Probably
Okay.
I will head off in 25 minutes from now for everyone who
Okay.
has some
Okay.
expectations today. I don't know. Maybe you have.
Mm. And you raised a good point that that's like that profile of people. Those are usually our clients, because it's very hard, especially if you go in with it with that victimhood, with that victim mentality. Um, what I can say on this, on the change management aspect, is that the cost of change management, so the effort of going through the change, will be um, distributed asymmetrically across the organization. There's a few people who will have to work really hard to make the change happen. and it's usually a mix of people at the lower levels or sort of close to the code, and mixed with a few people or maybe only one person at the top. So it isn't that it's like this whole chain and everybody sort of carries it equally, or usually there is very little cost, let's say, in cultural change happening at the middle management layer. Usually it's at the top and it's at the bottom. Unless you have like a specialized like bubble, like in sort of centralized immune system, or if you're doing change management in a sub organization inside an organization, then it'll have like a sort of little island to hop from. But generally, it's the people at the bottom and the people at the top who are most affected, who will have to invest the most energy. So you and I came onto this topic because we discussed that it comes rather easy for you and I, that we like this, like we enjoy change management, we enjoy helping teams, helping organizations improve their culture. And people come to us for advice, and where it usually breaks down, this whole process of, I don't need coaching, just give me a few tips, right? Like that's usually how it starts, when they're like dipping their toe into the field. They are usually asking us, hey, what would you do in this situation? And we saw Diary of a CEO with Dr. K reminding us of the situation, right? Where it doesn't matter what we tell them. Like whatever you and I answer this person to, hey, Adrian, what would you do if my team was having these issues? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what our answer is, because the solution isn't in the actions. The solution is inside, right? To you and me, change management is easy. So what we will do, our action, makes sense because to you and I, doing that action is easy. To the person who's asking, in most cases, doing the thing that is required is difficult. So they probably won't do it, right? So they come to us, we give them an answer, and then they won't
come
do
to
it.
us, ask, and even don't do it. Then they need a little bit of a push. They want to have this push. I have that every
Yes.
time. It's
Yes,
like
they
they
want it.
already know, they accept it, but somehow they don't do. They wait until you, with the authority, say you need to go now. Okay. It's a little bit like reduced to the relationship which we are used to as parents and children. It's like the final permission and push needs to come from the person outside. Sometimes it's
and I would even highlight this risk to other coaches, agile coaches especially. I have to wag my finger at agile coaches. Sometimes the leader will mistakenly communicate that what they need from the coach is permission. That the expert has said that this is needed, so they are now telephoning. Yes, the agile coach has said X, Y, and Z. You and I are not agile coaches, but this is advice for agile coaches that are sort of compartmentalized and bucketed down to making only certain kind of suggestions. The leaders, they just want a push, they want support, they want help. They don't necessarily need permission. So when they ask for permission, it's very important to reframe it, to help them reframe it so they get their power back. Like they have zero chance of success, like close to zero chance of success, if they come at this problem as a victim against an unsurmountable task, right? So giving them permission is just going to, even though it might seem helpful at the beginning, it'll just reinforce that worldview of this is going to be impossible. We'll do a small change and then people will go back to how things were in 2 weeks. Right? So it's very important to maintain that aspect of they need help, they need support, they need advice, they need a little bit of push, and everybody in the team needs a little bit of push. So you and I picked this topic because it's obvious to the two of us that this comes easy to us. Like to me, and I won't speak for you, but for me, I realized early on in my career that for most engineers, doing something about the thing that bothers them at work, making a change or suggesting a change or implementing a change about how their team develops software is hard for them. It's uncomfortable for them. It's sticky. It's like they would rather do something else. And early on in my career, I've noticed that for me, it's easy. That doesn't mean that it's not uncomfortable. For me, it's uncomfortable not to do the change.
Yes.
Right? So I find it impossible to ignore. For me to come into a team and I see them, I don't know, shouting at each other or not communicating or acting like a feature factory and not suggest improvements. Like, to me, that's impossible, right? I see it. It's like stinging in my eyes. It's very uncomfortable for me to sit there and just not fix it and not improve processes and make them simpler, make them a little bit more humane, right? So, and I think that sets us apart, because even though a lot of people would like to be in such an environment, they don't necessarily enjoy creating such environments. And God forbid, turning a environment that isn't into one that is.
It's mostly the same thing. Lot of two things. So creating one, mostly you have already one. It is not very often that you start from scratch. Mostly you have something which was grown widely, like a wild garden, and now you are supposed to clean everything up to make it with everything which looks pristine and fine and these kind of things. And you realize just by looking at it how much work it is, how much conflicts you will pull up, all the awkwardness in those meetings when you ask the question what people think and you don't get an answer and you think, oh, they're all rejecting me. There are so many subconscious little things happening in your mind at the same time that you easily build up anxiety or angst. And it's basically what you have there. That is absolutely normal.
And it will trigger a procrastination response within the key decision makers, where they will want a quorum or democratize the whole thing, or run endless rounds of retrospectives, or seek permission to instill change rather than just going in and doing it. So my advice for people who are in this situation: A, either get a coach like Adrian and myself, or B, find the person in your organization who finds it impossible to ignore the situation. Not the complainer necessarily, not somebody who complains, but somebody who is naturally predisposed to wanting the change and for whom it is difficult to stomach the current situation, the current status quo. Somebody who is naturally propelled into some kind of imbalance due to the situation. And the situation could be your pipeline is stuck, there's too many PRs open, your team is shipping AI slop, your team is inconsistent about the AI slop. Some of them are using Claude, some of them are using Codex, some of them are skipping the pipeline, some of them are in the pipeline. Inconsistencies in generational or taste, maybe, about how you want to do front-end development or front-end testing, or how you want to incorporate chatbots into your AI system, into your product. All of these things could be solved, could be improved, could be made more either experimental or product-oriented. And generally, what bothers people the most, if we had to pick an example of such a cultural issue, is a feature factory, where no one person can fit the problem and the solution space in their head. So you split work. You get this sort of, Tim Uttinger calls this the scatter-gather behavior, right? So you take a complex problem, you break it apart so that you can parallelize it, and then you parallelize it, and then you gather every now and then to sync up on the status of the project. With the downside being that no one person, including the person hosting the meetings, no one has the full product in their head anymore. So it might feel very uncomfortable to work on such a project. And it doesn't have to be that way, right? So like this scatter-gather behavior is usually a symptom of a culture where people find it very difficult to work together and collaborate inefficiently on a new product that requires innovation, or just on a complex feature that is, I don't know, is using some different integration point or something that you've never done before. that it's at least to some degree novel, so it's not a repeat of some past copy pasting some old code.
Very often, something what you haven't done before is actually working together in the team, and the lead does know that. And if you want to change something about that, which is normally one of the first steps you do, you need to get the team together, otherwise you won't make a change. And there you have the problem that it's actually over. The people will take a look and see that, okay, I'm isolated right now. Actually, I'm quite fine. I just don't like sometimes that there is stress or deadlines, but I'm actually fine with being alone. And the problem with you have those isolated aisles everywhere, and those are very ineffective. Since the first step is you need to get them together, means that everyone gets a little bit uncomfortable. So you get uncomfortable as well. So you are a leader again who does feel like, oh, I can't fight so many egos at the same time. Getting them to overcome their own ego, the resistance to change, in this case, the saboteur resistance, and actually work towards an aligned mission. So it is very hard to just start and explain an aligned mission without becoming protective. So I see very often leaders are like sitting in a meeting with a lot of people and then start to speak. I'm in that meeting as well. And they start to speak like, I have this idea. I wanted to know what you think about that. In that moment, you already lost, because a mission is not a democratic thing in the team. You can't decide the mission together. That it is predefined, right? So you can decide, or you as a team member, when you listen to this as an IC or something, or team lead or something like that, your role is defined inside that mission. So you will receive the mission and make the best out where you can take ownership. And that is the problem, that this construct is nearly impossible to create by a leader who has not done that naturally. And that is, we have maybe some different ways how we bring people towards that. But and I think there are multiple, but it's a journey. You don't do that overnight, because you can't change a person without forcing the person, and people will recognize if you force a person. It must be an intrinsic intrinsic move combined with willpower and the confidence to do that by the leader, not by the coach. People can recognize, okay, there is a coach, there's a mentor, there is something going on, we change, but it must be the person. People need to believe in the mission when the other person is gone, that we can do this mission without the person. If that is not given, that is one of the first things is to create the confidence of the leader, to build it up to the point that there is actually no cage anymore. So there might be some circumstances, but not a cage where you feel like shackled. And that is actually a metaphor for being shackled. It's like have no confidence. I'm not daring to do something like this. You're smiling. Why?
Yeah, I had a situation like this actually. One of my clients.
You had this situation like this when? The last 50 minutes, probably.
No, but last year. So one of my clients last year, when they brought me onto their team, their team started asking questions of, okay, who's this? What's Dennis doing? Like, what's his role, right, with us? And clumsily, they introduced, like, I came in to help them with team collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
Team collaboration and making their whole product management, product development process more predictable, or at least more transparent. At the very least, more transparent, so there weren't so many surprises just before a release, or so many surprises just before a deadline. They were suffering from typical situations with that made them act like a feature factory, basically. Very disempowered, very scatter-gather. And they clumsily introduced me as an interim engineering manager. And I pulled them aside and I said, why did you introduce me like an interim engineering manager? And they told me, well, isn't that what you're going to be teaching them? Engineering management? It's like, no. It's like, that's what I'm teaching you. Like, this is your role, right? Like, If you introduce me as the fractional EM, then I'm taking your power away. I'm talking to the CTO, right? Then I'm taking your power away. Then I'll be doing the thing that I'm actually here to
You
hold
are
you
an
accountable for
enhancement, not
doing.
a replacement. In the
Yes, like I'm here to enhance how you do it. And I even told them that, look, you have your own management style that you're not showing. You have to discover it and be comfortable showing it. Otherwise, if you hire me, I will show my own management style, and that management style might be incompatible with your current DNA, with your current organization. Plus, I also don't have the authority. I'm the coach. Like, like I
Normally, we
also have
aren't
a.
even enough hours there to actually do real management locally. You need to be present all day long with the people. If you
I
have
mean,
a
I
large
am as a
team.
coach. I am present with the
Mm.
people, right? It's just that I usually limit it to either I'm observing and managing, or I'm coaching, or I'm coaching and advising strategy. Like I never want to be in a conflict of interest where you have an issue with how you're managing, with how your teams are either self-managing or how you're managing them, and then I'm also doing management in there, right? So I reserve that. I do sometimes do that, right? I do sometimes fill in to give people contrast, to give people an experience of, okay, how would Dennis manage this? But I generally only do that when the other managers are not in the room, just to give the engineers contrast of what is possible. So usually when, I don't know, an EM or a CTO goes on vacation, I might volunteer. Like, look, I'm his coach. I know I'm current on all things. If an engineer doesn't want to step up, I can fill in for a week just to give them an experience of the differences of how somebody else from a different culture would do things. And that's fun. But I can't do that all the
Is that
time.
comfortable for the CTOs who are on vacation?
For the CTOs, yes, I think it's mostly the engineers who are confused.
Mhm.
So, no, I mean, comfortable. The CTOs love it. The CTOs, when they come back, they would rather I just keep doing that, right? But I can't effectively train them if I also take over the area where I'm
Well,
supposed to train them.
I know
Like, that's not.
many engineering managers who can't let go. They feel like if someone else would do that for them, they lose the grit and the whip. That's a little bit like, or the wit. That's a little bit. That's the reason why I asked. So I actually see a little bit like from a different area
No,
because
that's a fair point. That's a fair point. But I do, just to give to our listeners a little bit more context. The reason I step in is because generally, now, we titled the episode "Burned Out and Caged." Generally, this does happen. What you're saying, CTOs or leaders or managers find it difficult to step away. So one of the first things, like, I come in to see if they're showing some kind of lethargy or anhedonism, right? So where they don't experience joy, or some kind of detachment, apathy, or signs of burnout. And I then ask them to look for signs in themselves and in their team, and to be extremely strict about PTO usage. So if somebody on their team didn't go on vacation for a year, right? And in most countries that's illegal, right? So you have to fix that. But you might be working remotely or have some like weird employer of record setup with partial freelancer remote work, staff augmentation. So if there's a loophole, rest assured somebody is taking advantage of it. So that's usually the first thing we clear out, and that includes like me really being adamant with the leader that, hey, you need to take 2 weeks off. And usually they will tell me, no, I can't do that. Everything will break apart. And usually, as a helping mechanism, I step in. So we usually set up this path where I become comfortable with the team becomes comfortable with me, leader becomes comfortable with me. And if they really can't step away, I tell them, look, you go on vacation now. I take over these duties. The rest we spread over with your C-suite. Done. See you in 2 weeks. And that's a huge help. If they're willing to go through that experiment, they come back and they're like, okay, but now back to the stress, right? And then, but just having that little break, it's a little reset, and it sort of, I don't know. Usually they come back a little bit smitten about, okay, actually it wasn't that hard, and it's nice to see that I'm not irreplaceable. But also, I thought I was irreplaceable, and now that's a bit of a, you know, punch to their ego about, okay, I can be replaced by
This
the
is
coach.
this is the point that many simply don't go, and
Yeah.
they basically keep their laptops, and every morning 10 o'clock in the stand-up meeting, they are wherever they
Yeah.
are with their family. It's like, I need to, I was like that for so many years.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because of ego, but simply because I had this feeling that things break in my own company.
Mm-hmm.
And we are this constant firefighting mentality was back then a big issue 10 years ago, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That got much better. So, but I put a lot of weeks and months and years into that,
Mm-hmm.
and that is what you need to do as well. So, as a solution to that, because I actually run out of time for today. But by the way, you can go on if you like. So, I think as a solution for that is you need to, as a leader now, not as I see it's basically as a middle management leader, you need confidence. And confidence you only actually have if you are become aware of your own ego. That's you mentioned ego. So you
Mm-hmm.
can't just run on your ego. Your ego will never support you. Never. Ego is not made to support you in a tech environment. It is a survival mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
It is not based on the what virtues based on Plato's Republic. So you want to help other people. So it is like the virtues to help your team, the environment to actually make it better,
Mm-hmm.
the higher good. And you don't do that with your ego. With your ego, you are, for yourself. It's just for yourself. Protection, procrastination, being better than others. You don't want to have that. You need to get over that. And the actual self-confidence you have is based upon that you actually can make decisions which change who you are. Like you said, as an example, you could even place another person into your role and you still be confident doing your job.
Yeah.
And those are very, very low level things you need to actually acquire to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Low level, but not low effort. It is actually high effort to get into those.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
I think that probably month before you get into very good, let's say, self-confident things where you can run everything without someone.
Mm-hmm.
But you should early on really start to ask more questions and putting out statements. That helps a lot. Reduce speaking time, listen more to people, and reflect about you and let others give opinion about what you do as well, but not in a way like, oh, people, can you please rate how I'm doing? It is more
Yeah.
like ask
Yeah.
people exactly what they would like to change. So you give them permission to take ownership, to tell you the exact same thing you would tell them. That is actually challenging in that moment, but don't be the person who is vulnerable in that moment. This is not what I mean. Vulnerability is very dangerous. You need to be confident in a way that you show that I am willing to take the consequence. So tell me what to do, not the vulnerable person. That's nonsense out there. Vulnerability is dangerous because people will see, oh, with a vulnerable person, not confident, I would follow it. It's not a good idea. That is how egos work. Egos will
Mm-hmm.
never
Mm-hmm.
follow a leader who doesn't seem strong because they want to survive. And so vulnerability is not a good idea. What you need to have is confidence that if they follow you, you are worth following. It's a good idea. Then they actually do that even when you are not there because they have in mind you were there, you given the permission to do that, and another one could do that as well, as long as you come back and they know exactly it's going further. That is the way how I see things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the reasons I have a podcast called Worth Following. Because worth following is actually the aspect which you need to understand in this case. If you are not worth following, you are actually in a cage you have built for yourself by your ego.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a cage actually from outside. Most often it is not from outside. It is caged in your own ego. It is you are yourself holding you back. You are in a position where you were never prepared for. You never spent time and money into preparing yourself for that a situation, and you realize that it's bad and you're still not doing anything. Yes, you can blame the CTO. But have you done everything you can on your position
Mm-hmm.
so far? And that is the point where you need to start. right?
Generally, people who feel caged that way, they're looking for some form of caretaker relationship,
Mhm.
right? So they're looking for somebody inside the organization who will take care of them because they're not feeling well. They don't feel safe in their environment, in their culture, in their team, in their layer of management, or talking to stakeholders, or just skip, right? So there's an aspect of codependence that forms and becomes unconstructive, right? So it's very difficult to then be yourself and individuate yourself and your style and bring your style into the company, while at the same time this caretaking relationship, or the need for it, or your belief, your conviction that you need it or all hell breaks loose, deconstructs what makes you, your individuality, your style, your leadership style, your communication style. And even if you're doing engineering or not, a lot of people who feel helpless like this, people who are first line managers, they stop coding when maybe they should just sit down with the engineers more often and help them solve problems, right? Not ask questions, but go in with the engineer when there's a crisis, calm them down, tell them what to do, and leave and see if the instruction was helpful. If the instruction was not helpful, then next time ask questions. And if asking questions doesn't help, then maybe
By
show
the
them
way,
an
that is a
example.
good point that if you have the chance, start as a team lead, not as a high level engineering manager. And there, before that, you were just 5 years IC. That is,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
most cases, a very bad idea. Even though there is no one in that organization, if there is no one else in the organization and you are already the next person for a field promotion, and it makes sense to everyone, I understand that. But then negotiate in the very moment when that happened a plan with a
Mm-hmm.
CEO, CTO, and HR, how that will be supported with money and time.
Yes.
Don't let anyone be the person driving you into that cage, and
Yeah.
then saying after this honeymoon phase is over and they point a finger at you, why you are not good enough in that job, you voted for that job, you wanted to have that, now take the crown. We had that, heavy is the
Mm-hmm.
crown idea. But that is the point. If you do the things unconscious, in basically unintentional, let's call it, you have done it unintentionally, you deserve what you get. That's the reality, that you need to accept that. If you cannot accept that, that's the reason why you are suffering in that moment. You need
Yes.
to become intentional about what you do. And actually, you always have an ego. You don't get rid of the ego. The point is to control it, to be you, the self, the who is aware of, I am the leader, I am responsible for others, silver virtues, I want to help them, I want to make a change here, I want to improve the organization and the product. And therefore, I need to know who I am myself, know thyself, there's another aspect, and then make the right changes and challenge the right people and be challenged at the same time. So
Mm-hmm.
let ownership actually happen inside the team. That is complicated. To be honest, it is complicated. And at some point in time, as you mentioned in the beginning, it becomes so obvious that it starts to be hard to not do that. I absolutely agree. But when you were never there and you never had examples, then it's extremely hard to get to the motion. And before, if someone tells you in 2 months from now, you might get promoted, then it's time to get a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
Not a coach, not necessary to the time, but you need to mentor and say, I'm worried. What do I need to do? Let's help me as a pre-stage for coaching later on, to
Mm-hmm.
get, because you will take more responsibility. Sometimes your salary rises 30 to 50% or even more, right? You are somehow suddenly responsible for other people's and their fates. So inside that company, and you are
And this
responsible.
usually also happens with natural progressions on the senior track, right? So it's not only on senior to EM is a typical example, right? Where you're a senior engineer and you're offered a promotion or offered the track of manager. Well, you need to go, but you're still here. So can I finish
Sometimes I
my?
have the problems. Yeah, just finish your plaidoyer and then.
Thank- So this also happens on the senior. So I would find it appropriate if I asked you, hey, do you want an EM promotion, or do you want to stay on the IC track? Right? Like that would be a reasonable thing to ask. What people don't ask usually is mid-level engineers of, hey, do you want to be promoted to senior? Because most people just by default are like, yes, duh, of course, I'll get paid more money. But senior engineer, senior software engineer is one of the most inflated titles in the industry. And in some organizations, that means that you'll suddenly become a tech lead, a project manager, a product manager, a liaison for stakeholders, a liaison for customers, and that's a good thing. Like, you'll become a better engineer. But a lot of people are not ready for that, right? So you need to be careful what you sign up for. Otherwise, you'll just end up in a cage. Like, it happens by 1,000 cuts. It's not overnight. You get promoted to senior. Now people have these expectations of you, or tech lead, or senior plus, or staff. But usually the staff one is explicit. It's like very explicit. And you then need to be careful that suddenly people have millions of expectations of how well you should be communicating, how you should be managing things, leading things, orchestrating, organizing, managing costs, infra, everything, right? So you got to be careful how you're growing and where you're growing, and you need to have a clear understanding of where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are, and seek help if needed. If you don't enjoy growing into a certain direction, if it becomes very easy for you to ignore the growth path, then it'll be hard for you to be on the growth path. That self-awareness goes a long way. It'll help you a lot. Just be aware of that.
Good point.
Okay, Adrian.
I need to go. Thanks a lot. Do you
Thank you,
continue
Adrian.
or do we cut?
I'm gonna open the floor for like 3 minutes. If we have a question, I'll stay here to answer questions. So, thank you, Adrian. Everybody else in chat, Shay, Vivor, Dixie, Pablo, Oba, Ritesh, Camila on YouTube. If you have any questions regarding burnout at work, leaders who are stuck, change management, changing the way you work,
I head off.
Ciao, Adrian.
Bye.
Questions about Scrum, questions about retrospectives, questions about management styles, how you build software, AI slop. These things are popular nowadays. And they all contribute to some kind of either cultural friction or organizational friction, so that you feel this ick at a certain point about being on a either novel feature or building a part of the product that requires innovation. So post your questions now. If there's no questions, yeah. Actually, let me see if I'm looking at all the channels. So we're on YouTube today. We're on LinkedIn. Let me check LinkedIn real quick. How's everybody doing, by the way? Where are you watching us from? My voice is quite hoarse. Sorry about that. LinkedIn is fine. YouTube. Let's check real quick. Gold Coast, Australia. Nice. You're with us quite often, Shay. Where do you work? Like, what? How come these topics are interesting to you? Are you an engineering manager? Are you in engineering leadership? CTO and senior roles for many years. Have you experienced the kind of cultural friction lately or ever in your career that we've been talking about today? If so, what did you do about it? Or how often did you? What's your score? Like, how often did you try to fix it, and how often did you leave and just throw up your hands in the air? I'm the kind of person that try to fix it before I leave, generally. Right? So it'll jump at me. I will look at it, and I was like, okay, some of these I can fix. For some of these, I need support, and then if the things I can fix, I'm good. If I get support, that's awesome. But generally, what will make me leave a organization if I'm trying to improve things and people are actively fighting me. It's like, no, don't change that. People are incompetent. You know how they are. We need those guardrails. It's always been like this. Don't change anything. We're good. Thank you. Let's just finish the deadline. And yeah, like for me, that's the red flag. Also, as a coach, if that happens, I can't help them, or the pain isn't high enough. One of the ways that I maybe as advice for other coaches is it's very easy to check for pain because it's, even though the engineers might not want to face the dragon, right? So admit that there is a problem in their engineering culture, but how they work, how they treat each other. The business owners will feel it. The business owners will say that, okay, delays are impossible. It takes a long time to get anything out. Or when things do go out, it seems incongruent with product plan or the roadmap, or it's very expensive, or budgeting is very complicated, or they spend a lot of time in meetings and then they change their mind last minute, or there's constantly a chronically disappointed customer sort of experience. You just check for that. As a coach, I generally tell the business leaders, hey, this is what 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 pain looks like. If you're experiencing that, then we can definitely fix this and turn it around. What I don't do is do coaching just for fun, just because somebody wants to spend their mentoring education budget and want to force people to go on, I don't know, 1 hour per month kind of career massaging. That's not for me. There are people who are really good at that. It's just not my rodeo. Shay says, for sure, every time a new team member joins for the team, yeah, it's mainly getting that buy-in alignment. As things move and change, keeping everyone on the bus. Yeah, I find that in organizations where we successfully make a cultural change, right? So that we shift their culture to one that is very generative, that is very self-aware, open, transparent, continuously improving. Usually their recruitment pipeline doesn't reflect that. So what you would want to some degree is maybe to filter out candidates who are still matching that old way of working. And so usually that funnel keeps pulling in more people that could, not out of their own fault, but out of just habit, re-invite that old culture that we went away from. So even when we do successfully make a large cultural shift in our organization, we find that at least a CTO or key leader, a key manager, will have to spend a lot of time with new hires specifically. Like there will always be that sort of immune response coming out of that kind of hire, because this organization has never really, organizations that struggle with this, they never really established these practices early on. They just tolerate them and then fix them later. So every time you get a new hire, it's dialed up to 11, right? So because Organizations that don't struggle with these kinds of cultural issues are those that just have a playbook. You onboard somebody and they are in that culture day one. They know, they can learn it, they can absorb it, they can see it everywhere. A organization that just recently went through a transformation, they won't necessarily be able to clearly signal the new behavior, right? So that there will be some, oops, yeah, you're right, like we're doing it like this, or the documentation says this, we didn't update it yet, and we're doing it differently now. Let's update that, right? So there is a certain clumsiness often, or some delay, some lag in certain processes or documentation or playbooks that are then following the transformation as it runs its course. Okay, well, thank you for being with us, Shay. Thanks for the chat. To others, thanks for watching us live. If you want to stay in touch, please subscribe on your favorite channel. We're streaming on YouTube and LinkedIn and Substack. So if you could give us a follow, if you could subscribe, that's the best way to help us, support us. Also, it's the best way to get in touch with us in case you want to send us a message, maybe ask us a question that we'll happily answer, or give us a suggestion if you want something discussed or researched or just want to talk about, then we're very, very helpful, very, very happy to hear your thoughts. I'll see you again on Wednesday. We stream 4 p.m. Central European time on Wednesdays. And I'll see you then. Thank you. Hang on. I made in my outro and Shay posted another comment. After joining often, it's usually midnight here, so winding down. I enjoy the chats. It reminds me of hallway chats at tech conferences. Yes, that is the vibe we're going for. Happy it resonates. See you next time.